All right. Welcome back to the Contrarians. We have another great panel discussion for you today. This one is called Albums That Lied to Us. Albums that maybe weren't what you were expecting, or as you'll find, we're going to have a pretty broad description for it. But it should be a fun topic of discussion for today. If you like the Contrarians, please give a like, give a subscribe, share with your friends. But most importantly, please join the conversation in the comments down below. We want to know what you think as well. There's always a second debate in the comments, and we really want to hear what you have to say. So please join the comments. There's other ways to support the channel in the description below. But without further ado, I'm going to get right into it. So thank you to all our panelists for joining today. And let's start off with David. David, please tell us three albums that lied to you.
Okay, yeah. So this was an interesting topic, and oftentimes we get on these panels and you have a topic, and I know kind of right away exactly what direction I'm going, or I have some ideas. And this one was interesting and really took a little bit of thought. And so I think what it came down to for me was a lot about timeline. So for me, I started getting really into music and buying records and getting into bands' catalogs kind of late 80s, right? So for me, you'll notice there's sort of a theme here that a lot of the bands, by the time, about a decade in, by the 90s, a lot of weird things happening, and getting some albums in the catalog that kind of go into left field. So without further ado, I'm going to start with one that sort of jumped out at me real obviously, and it's Dokken Shadow Life. So being a big Dokken fan and getting sort of into the band in that sort of window, right? Timeline is always super important, I think, when a lot of these discussions. And so for me, sort of that Back for the Attack era, I get into the band big time, go big, get the back catalog. And then there's the weird breakup at the kind of at their, peak really, and then you've got sort of a lull where there's nothing, and Don does a record and there's some lynch mob stuff, and then they come back with a Dysfunctional record, which actually is a pretty good record. It's not Back for the Attack Part 2 certainly, but it's got some good material. Sounds like Dokken. It's got George's guitar and Don's voice, which when those things are happening, it sounds like a Dokken record generally. And then, then the follow-up comes out, and they did some touring, and I remember seeing them at sort of a mid-sized club, and it was cool. And then a lot of anticipation for the follow-up, and then Shadow Life comes out. And really, in most cases, I can find something valuable in almost any record I get, even if it's sort of a left field. And some of the other ones, although they threw me for a loop, I've grown to like them, or I liked them, in fairly short order, or there's pieces of it that I enjoy. I cannot find anything redeeming on this record whatsoever. And if anybody can, I'm open to, if anybody in the comments wants to tell me something and why there's something redeeming on this. Fortunately, it's never been released on vinyl. Hopefully it never is. This is awful. I don't know what they were doing. I don't understand. It doesn't sound like Dokken to me. It sounds like a mess. And so out of the gate, I'm going with Shadow Life. It's not listenable. And it hurts me because I'm a big Dokken fan. I have everything, the catalog since then. I think they're Hell to Pay and Lightning Strikes Again and Empire. They're great, great records. And I think almost anything that Dokken puts out, I enjoy, except this. I can't find anything. And I've tried to go back to it. And I said, maybe I was in a mode, maybe I was in a frame of mind, and I wasn't open. And sometimes you go back to something later and you go, that was not so bad, or there's a couple redeeming tracks on there, and there's some value there. Nothing. So I'm going to start with this, and it's just a coaster basically. It sits on my shelf. I can't do anything with this. Second one I'm going to say again, it's another band that I sort of got into in the 87, 88 when I was getting into bands and getting into back catalog, was the Scorpions. And, and like Dokken, big Scorpions fan, got in, kind of after Worldwide Live and Savage Amusement and back catalog. And then sort of the post Savage Amusement stuff was got into some poppy stuff with Feel the Heat or whatever. But then Eye to Eye comes out. And, this is as much of a departure for the Scorpions as anything. A lot of bands, a lot of 80s bands, or Scorpions are really a 70s band, but a lot of bands that were hitting their stride in the 80s in the hard rock and metal scene. By the mid 90s, had sort of lost their way, and they were either trying to chase a trend or just getting experimental or doing or being influenced by what was out there, and that was coming through. So some of it, probably was contrived in an attempt to get back, to selling records and making money. And some of it probably was, their own as artists being creative and trying to try something different. So I'm not sure what direction this was, or whether this was contrived or whether this was a legitimate, attempt to just do something different, but really a huge departure from, even the record sleeve or the cover here. It took me a minute to see who's who, they don't look like the Scorpions on this, like which one's which, So, you look long enough to figure it out, but it's just different. It doesn't look like a Scorpions record. Doesn't look like a Scorpions, other than the logo, probably. It doesn't, you don't look at it and go, there's a Scorpions album. There's some good tracks on here, actually. So other than, as opposed to Shadow Life, this is actually, is a good record. And if you're listening to it, it's not, you're not going to try to compare this to Blackout or something like that and classic Scorpions, but there's some really good songs on here. Moment a Million Years, is a good one. It's a nice ballad. I mean, there's some good stuff on here. So if you listen to this with an open mind, I think you're going to find some value here. So unlike Shadow Life, I actually like this record. I saw this tour. So I didn't get off the ship, didn't bail for a lifeboat. So I stuck through. Pretty good record. So, but certainly surprised me. Didn't when I bought it, put it in expecting one thing. Certainly not what I expected from the Scorpions. And the third one I'm going to go with is a Kiss record. And so again, timeline matters. So for me, getting into Kiss in the late 80s and the Crazy Nights era, and then going back in the catalog, so many different, so many different things. So getting the albums out of order, I wasn't, it wasn't surprising to have different sounds. So when you're buying Dress to Kill and then Dynasty, different eras of the band, and then you get Unmasked. So it wasn't a surprise to me to get a Kiss record that sounded a little bit different than the last one I had. Cause I wasn't in the 70s in the moment getting them in order. And then all of a sudden, you go from Love Gun to Dynasty and the guys are like, what the heck is this? So, or even for the Elder for that matter, which threw a lot of people for a loop, but I didn't get that record till way later because it was out of print. And then I found it on cassette. But while it was a huge departure, it wasn't a super shock to me because I was used to getting Kiss stuff out of order and it was different. Now, by the 90s, I had been with Kiss for a few album cycles and Revenge had come out and I was kind of excited about that. And then the reunion happens and it's kind of a weird time. And then, the Carnival of Souls record starts to leak. And, I think I picked, like a lot of people, I got a cassette copy of the leaked album at a record show or something. And that was a surprise. So my third one, I'm going to go with Carnival of Souls because that was really a surprise for me to hear that record, the down tuning, the very Allison Chaney. It was really, when the last record you were used to was Revenge, and, it really was such a departure, really a left turn. And things were, down tuned. The vocals were different. Now, like the Scorpions record, I don't hate this. There's a lot of songs I like on this, but it's really, really different. So this record surprised me. Like I said, it was released officially much later post reunion, probably in response to how many bootlegs and leaks had been circulating, and so we might as well just put it out there. So, I have to be in a certain mood for it. But coming off Revenge, kind of what Kiss was going to sound like, kind of expecting maybe Revenge Part 2 because it was such to me a really, really good record. Carnival of Souls was a huge departure. So again, pretty good record. There's a lot I like about it, but I got to be in a certain mood. So those are my three.
Nice.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. Thanks, Dave. Do you mind if I call you Dave instead of David?
Not at all.
All right. Awesome. Almost slipped up. Matt, let's get your three albums that lied to you.
Sure. So I broke mine up into three different types of lies. And so the first kind of lie that I wanted to talk about was where the imagery and artwork on the album cover doesn't really match the type of music that's within. And so the very first one that for sure came to mind was Molly Hatchet. And so looking at those albums in the bins, right, really thinking this is going to be a heavy metal, maybe fantasy lyric type of a band. And of course it's Southern rock, right within sort of the Leonard Skinner vein. I really enjoy Molly Hatchet, but at the first exposure, it was definitely not what I was expecting based on what I saw on the album cover. So that would be my first choice. The second one is where sort of the artist or band that's being presented isn't really exactly who made the record. And the specific type that I want to talk about is when something was presented as a band album, but it was really a solo album. And then for whatever reasons, usually marketing and trying to get some sales, it gets presented as a band project. So the one that I wanted to highlight, I guess, as my choice would be A by Jethro Tull. So it started out as an Ian Anderson album, and really the band's, the band that's on the previous records is now going to be no more. They're breaking up. Ian Anderson intended it to be a solo album. Record company kind of steps in. It's going to be more marketable as a Jethro Tull album. I don't have a visual for this. I don't have it on vinyl, but I got it in the Jethro Tull book. It does at least have the them wearing the jumpsuits of that era. It's a pretty unique look. Some other examples of that would be Black Sabbath and Tony Iommi, right, for the 7-star one, and Albert Bouchard and Blue Oyster Cult for Imagine Us, right? So this really were intended as solo projects, but then were presented as a band, and that was a lie. That's not really what we were getting. And then the last one category would be just the expectations, and maybe this is similar to Dave, what you were saying, right, where you're expecting something with the music itself, and then it doesn't deliver on what your expectations were. And so for me, the number one choice here was the Di'Anno record. This is the first one that he did after Iron Maiden. And my my preconceptions at the time was that he was the really heavy punky member of Iron Maiden, and if he's not in the band, well, of course he wants to just make too heavy, edgy music for Iron Maiden. And this record is not that at all. It is very glossy. It's album-oriented rock. It's very melodic. He sings without much grit on it. It's not very good, in my opinion. It's later, I think his other things he did get back to more heavy things. So like Paul Di'Anno's Battle Zone or Killers or things like that would have more met my expectations for what I was expecting. But this was a real shock. And it's, I don't know if the look was sort of in line or not in line. Like it wasn't a really, really red flag. Like it looked sort of of its time, but then putting it on was really shocking. And I was looking at this earlier, and a big part of the credits on there, they're thanking the band's outfits kindly supplied by Wrangler. So what a strange thing to be putting on the album. Wrangler may have funded the whole recording for this, so maybe that was why they were thinking that Wrangler needed more smooth music. I don't know what the behind the scenes is. So anyways, those are my three types of lies.
Awesome. Cool. That was great.
Nice.
I like the premise there, like the types of lies instead of 3 albums. That's cool. All right. Last but not least, Martin.
Okay. So I wasn't sure of how this worked. I didn't know we had 3. I have a few more than 3, but I'll go very quickly because I don't have a lot to say about all of them. But in a general sense, I just want to add to what Matt said about the solo album thing. So you've got Twisted Sister, Love Is for Suckers. Supposed to be a Dee Snider solo album. You've got the very first Vandergraaf Generator album, the Grey Aerosol Machine, supposed to be a Peter Hamill solo album. And then, it becomes those. So there's lots of those. And there's there's other ways these bands lie to us. Is it a real drummer? Is it not? Outside songwriters, outside performers, live albums that are made in the studio. So there's all that form of live. But the live I want to talk about the most is along the lines of Matt's Molly Hatchet lie situation, right? So the funny thing is, as kids, we would go to the record stores in the 70s and you'd flip the album over. You'd see how many long hairs were in the band. You'd see what they were wearing. You'd check out that there was no orchestration, strings, flutes, horns, or very little. You'd read the song titles. Hopefully there's at least one or two violent song titles. And then you'd take a risk. You'd drop your $4.99 and you'd come home and you'd be ticked off at REO Speedwagon or Black Oak, Arkansas for this crap record that you just bought, right? I mean, Black Oak, Arkansas Street Party just lies to you from the front. It looks like a raucous killer, rockin' album. So I've got a few in that way, and I've got a theme here, the Canadian H theme. So Helix, they were an indie band before they got kind of heavier and went to Capitol and became kind of a Canadian hair band. But they had 2 albums. So this is White Lace and Black Leather. Anybody should check out Billy Oxygen, amazing song. But this has a super heavy song on it too called Breaking Loose, which is oddly the name of the first Helix album. But the first 2 Helix albums are on an indie label, their own label, H&S Records. It's not very heavy, but look at these guys. 1979, they're looking ready to rock, right? But they don't. Another band like that from Canada, Hellfield. Look at that thing, right? So this is 1978. There they are, looking all ready to rock. And their second album is even called Night Music, right? So how satanic is that, right? Hellfield Night Music. And they are absolutely rocking out on the back, but not a particularly heavy album. No one talks about them the same way we all talk about Moxie and Tease and Triumph and all that. Another one near and dear to my heart, another Canadian H band, Hammersmith. So this is a band, they only made 2 albums. I have a soft spot for them because I actually saw them live as a kid in Nelson, BC. But the second one was called It's For You. There's actually some pretty heavy stuff on both of these. They're both about 38% heavy, right? And there they are rocking out on the back. One guy's even got a flying V, but just not that heavy a band, right? And then that's it for the H department. And one that's notorious among us new wave of British heavy metal fans is Demon, Night of the Demon. Check that out. Look how heavy that looks, right? Great album cover. The back is really mysterious and crazy heavy looking. And then the second album is even crazier, scarier. The Unexpected Guest. How artful is that for a satanic name of an album, right? The Unexpected Guest. Flip it over, it's got this. And then on the inside, this freaked us out as kids, but it's got these, on the gatefold, it's got these 2 old men pictures, right? And it's really creepy looking, but the recording isn't very good. It's this weird kind of creepy, poppy, heavy, proggy sort of new wave of British heavy metal. The albums absolutely don't stand up. And my last one is the notorious Ram Jam situation. So here you've got the first album, doesn't look like much of anything. How does the second album lie to you? It still looks the same as the first one. They make a dumb joke, portrait of the artist as a young ram. They got this non-heavy metal looking album cover. On the back, they look like a bit of a rough yacht rock band. They look like, a California troubadour, avocado mafia band. You got Jimmy Santoro over there in the Hawaiian shirt. But what Jimmy Santoro does to this band is he turns this into one of the heaviest albums of the 70s. This is raging, wild, crazy heavy. Most of it, well, all of it except for about a song and a half is pretty heavy. And the non-heavy stuff is like Aerosmith Last Child, but the heavy stuff, there's 3 or 4 songs on here that are like Judas Priest. It's really raucous recording. Gone Wild is the most rambunctious, crazy, heavy song I've ever heard in terms of vibe. That song just gets me going every time, but it's actually a little bit boogie woogie, that one. But Just Like Me, Pretty Poison, Hurricane Ride, Runway, Runaway. This is a really crazy heavy album, 1978. Doesn't look like it, totally lies to you in a good way, because when you get it, it's an absolute cult classic. Then the lead singer goes to jail on drug charges. They never tour it. That's the end of the band. Yeah, it's a crazy story. I have a whole podcast episode on that, on the strange story of Ram Jam and the Kazinets Cats situation. But yeah, there you go. So there's one that lies to you in the other direction. It doesn't look heavy, but it's totally heavy. But all the other ones are of that theme of us wasting our $4.99 in the record store by buying REO Speedwagon's albums, basically.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Martin. Well, there you have it, folks. We've got a bunch of albums for you that lie to you, and what we've learned tonight is that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's pretty good. So I want to thank each of our panelists for being here today. This one was short but sweet. If you like the Contrarians, you can give us a like, you can give us a subscribe. There's other ways to support the channel in the description. You've already heard all about that, so let me just thank you for being here. I'll thank the panelists one more time, and if morning, day, or night, have a good one. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, guys.